right, so if you're not familiar with the local catch network, we are made up of seafood harvesters, technical assistance providers, organizers, and researchers from across North America who are committed to strengthening local and regional seafood systems through community-supported fisheries and direct seafood marketing. The network is supported by an executive committee made up of fishermen, technical assistance providers, and tribal representatives, and has institutional support from the University of Maine. I'll share just a few Zoom housekeeping items. If everyone, we already talked about staying on mute, feel free to turn your camera on or off. And when we do have Q&A towards the end, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. And if you don't know how to do that, you just go down to the react button, which looks like a heart, and you can find the raise hand function there. We will also be monitoring the chat box throughout the presentation. So if you have questions or comments, please go ahead and put it in the chat box. And for now, we'll give that a little test. We'd love to see who's here and where you're coming from. So if you want to just put your name and what state or region or you're coming from, that would be great. Finally, we will be recording this session and we'll post the recording both to our website and our YouTube channel. We'll also send everyone who registered a follow-up email with the recording and the slides. So why are we here today? To learn about the USDA's value-added producer grants, who is eligible, applicant types, and how it applies to seafood businesses and more. The Value-Added Producer Grant Program helps agricultural producers and seafood harvesters enter into value-added activities related to the processing and marketing of new products. The goals of this program are to generate new products, create and expand marketing opportunities, and increase producer income. With us to share more information about the program are two USDA representatives who I'll hand it over to shortly. Greg York is a management and program analyst with USDA Rural Development based out of Washington, D.C. His primary role is working on value-added producer grants and has been doing so since 2011. Marley Johnson is a producer state specialist who joined Rural Development in 2019 as a pathway intern. Since that time, she has become a state specialist and is primarily focused on assisting farmers and ranchers in rural Montana. Thank you both for being here today. And Marley, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you guys all so much for being here. We are really excited to share this program with you. And it is timely because the program cycle just opened. So we will be presenting a few programmatic things here today. Greg will be monitoring the chat, and then we really want to dive into all your questions as we go and also at the end. So to start here, the Value-Added Producer Grant is authorized by the Farm Bill. If you want to get into that regulation, you can find it in 7 CSR or CFR 4284 subpart J. We're hoping to break down that government language for you here today. The purpose of the Value-Added Producer Grant is really to increase customers and revenue with your value-added projects and your ventures. It is for-profit businesses. There is a caveat there with value-added producer groups and the way that they're organized, but that does benefit value-added producers in general. So that is a caveat there. Real quick, just to get into a few things that value-added grant is not. And that is a training program intended to help people learn how to farm, technical assistance, research and development, and loans. So if that's what you're here for, that's okay. We can find some other programs for you, but the value-added producer are not those things. Some funding cycle logistics here today. The 2026 available funding package is looking about $25 million. That is a little bit less than we've seen in the past, but that's okay. We'll still be able to fund a lot of great projects. You will see here some new grant amounts. That is also new this year, and our intention there is to reach more projects and better serve different areas across the nation. That's going to be $200,000 for working capital and $500,000 for planning. Like I said, a little bit of an adjustment from last year. And then we also will be only taking submissions through the grant application portal. That was new last year. It worked really well. And we did make some tweaks to that, so it should be up and running great for you this year. Like I said, the grant application portal did just open last Thursday, and it is set to close April 15th at 1 p.m. So really noting that time frame there. 90-day cycle. April will be here before we know it. So getting those applications going and submitted sooner rather than later. And another thing to note about this program is you can use grant funds for up to 36 months. So if you're looking at a start date of about October 1st, 2026, you can use those grant funds all the way through September 30, 2029. So again, when you're looking at your scope and your project, 36 months for those funds. Next, we're going to get into some eligible applicants and what makes you eligible for this program. Starting off, all applications and applicants do have to have a SAM registration that will tie into your entity and they pair together. So that is required. You have to have an eligible applicant type and a SAM registration. And that has to be an active status when you submit your application. That is very important in order to be eligible to compete for funding, as well as having legal authority. You have to have be in good standing with your state and show that you are all up to standard there for your entity. So both of those are important to start, again, starting SAM registration right now to make sure that you are eligible for that. Next, we're going to talk about citizenship. More than 50% of your ownership has to be at least U.S. citizens or located in the U.S. And then multiple grants, you cannot have multiple grants at one time. So your entity that you're applying with can only have one grant at a time. That is important going into the current VAPG award. If you have an active award today, it has to be closed out before you apply for a next award. So really important. We had some errors in that last cycle. So if you have an award, close it. And then if you're looking to reapply, make sure that you don't have any funds out there as of now. Next, getting into some applicant types, there are multiple ways you can apply for this program. Agriculture producer group, co-ops, and majority-based businesses. The agriculture producer is the most common applicant type, and that is the day-to-day operation. You are the owner and applicant and all of that. The producer group is the majority of members and directors are at least 50% for the producer group. The majority controlled group is 50% of ownership and control of the decisions for the egg production. And then the co-op is a group, but you are incorporated. So all very similar, but it's important you distinctively decide which one of those you fall under. Next, just be ensuring that all agriculture producer groups are involved in the day-to-day duties, whether that's labor, management, operations, accounting. You must say yes, that you are actively involved in the agriculture production to be called an agriculture producer. And then last thing to note on that, you're contributing at least 50% of your commodities to the project, and then you produce from the raw to the value add. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But to be an agriculture producer, you're producing at least 51% for the project, you're involved in the day-to-day, and you see it from start to finish. Next, some logistical things, which I think really hits home with this group, is steering committees. You can be a steering committee and apply. That's an unincorporated group, and you have the intention of being incorporated into one of the eligible groups that we mentioned before. And that will be asked for at the grant agreement phase. But if you're in the process, you're saying, okay, by September, we will be organized. You can totally apply as a steering committee. Harvesters, this is where I was saying this will really hit home with this group, is you can be a harvester. And that is where it's naturally occurring and you have legal authority to harvest more than 50%. So you go out into the ocean, you're allowed to do that. You harvest 50% or more. that's totally great. And it's natural occurring. That's a big differentiation between farming, where someone else is producing or growing that on your behalf, versus naturally occurring in the wild. Again, open to all questions if that's unclear, but producers and harvesters are both really good avenues. The last thing to mention here is a contractor group. If you are contracted or contracted or a contractor, you are not eligible as an agriculture producer, just because you do not own that commodity, nor are you an agriculture producer for that. Do we want to pause here and maybe answer a few questions about that harvester egg producer? Craig, are there questions?
Yeah, there's a couple questions, and I apologize. I'm not the one that usually monitors the chat, so I think I was responding directly to folks with a couple of those. So I'll go back and address. I'm just going to scoot back up to the top to the first one. There was a question about, is this a first come first serve program? It is not. Everyone submits applications by April 15th. Once they're submitted, we review them for eligibility. Those that are deemed eligible are then entered into the competition, and based off the scoring in the merit evaluation section, they're then ranked and awarded in scoring order, basically highest score down till we run out of money. Now, there are some different reserve funds and things like that that play into that, but it's basically a scoring competition. Our nonprofits able to apply. Nonprofits, this is a for-profit program. So the whole intent here is to basically take an ag production business and help them take it to the next level by doing some sort of value-added project. So this is a for-profit program. The only nonprofit really that can apply for this is an agriculture producer group. And the reason they're eligible is because an agriculture producer group is basically designed and put together to benefit the agriculture producers, basically do a project for them or do work on behalf of the agriculture producers so that the benefits, the revenues, everything about that funnels back down to the agriculture producer, which leads to a question somebody asks later, are agriculture producers, are you eligible as fisheries as agriculture producers? And the answer is yes. Under the agriculture producer definition, there is the harvester caveat, which I think Marley's already covered. But as long as you have the legal right to harvest the seafood from our waterways, oceans, wherever you're getting it from, then you can qualify as a harvester, but you have to be the one that has the legal right to harvest those commodities. And then there was a question about new business. As far as your fishery goes and your license and what you're doing, you have to have the legal right to harvest the commodity and you have to be actively engaged in producing the commodity. As long as you're doing that, then you are eligible for the program. And then, did I miss any there? I'm sorry. Yeah.
We had a question from Amy, and Amy's got her hand raised. Do you want to go to Amy Grondin?
Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Sure. Just in the chat, I had put a question, and it kind of didn't look like a question. You said that you can only have one grant at a time, but that's one USDA grant. You could certainly have a grant from another source, correct? Or they're
Yes,
like,
it's one VAPG grant at a time. So
okay.
some of you on the call might have an active VAPG project that's going on right now. That's perfectly fine as long as you close out that grant, do all your reporting, get everything closed out with the state office before the application deadline. You can reapply for another grant, but just remember it has to be for a new project. It can't be for the existing project or duplicating what you're already doing.
And then could you just go over what SAM stands for and the UEI, what that stands for, please? And then thank you very much.
So, sorry, Marla, if you want to grab that one, but it's SAM is System of Award Management, and it's basically the way that the government goes about verifying who you are. And you basically go in there, you enter your information, you get a SAM registration. From there, they assign a UEI or I think it's a unique entity identifier, I believe is what it stands for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gets assigned to you, and then that's kind of basically how we verify who you are. But that SAM registration has to be active and valid at the time of application. A lot of folks start the SAM registration but don't finish it. And that part, yeah, I always feel bad for them, but you have to make sure you finish it. From what I'm told, it takes around 7 to 10 days to complete that whole process. So start it early. Do not wait till the end of the application, and then make sure you have that active date showing up on your SAM registration. You'll be good to go. And was there another part of that somebody was asking about, or did I get it all?
I think that rounds out those questions, but then Brick Wenzel had a question about the value. Do you want to go ahead, Brick?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So we've had difficulties with value-added grants in the past because our product doesn't have any value at all to start. We glean bycatch.
Hmm.
So will this grant be available to us, being that the product that we're receiving has zero value to start?
Do you want to address that, Marley? Or I think you had a slide about that. So
Yeah, do you want to just keep going and then we can,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We can
if I
just,
don't catch it, we can circle back.
yeah, we're going to cover that in the applicant eligibility here just in a second about the gleaning of the commodity, if you don't mind.
Thank you for the questions. Next, we're going to talk about project eligibility. This is where it gets good. You can think about how you're wanting to formulate that project. So first, your project, you can only go down the avenue of planning or working capital. You cannot do both. So really picking where if you're looking at planning grant or working capital grant, and then really defining your project. So a lot of you, when we're talking to you, you have a big scope and you have lots going on. But when we're talking about this project, we're really narrowing what that looks like. And again, looking at increasing customers and revenue here. First, looking at, oh, sorry, I missed a slide. So first, we're going to look at the methodology in which you apply. So a lot of you can fall under multiple of these methodologies, but it's just important to pick one. This is an eligibility component, and then address why that's the best fit for your project. First, change of physical state is really an irreversible methodology. So we're talking about cheese into milk, wheat into flour. You cannot take it back to its original state. Second is produced in a manner that enhances the value. Here we're looking at organic versus not organic, cage-free versus not cage-free. So the value that it's produced gives it a higher dollar in the end. Third is physical segregation. So this is taking it from GMO to non-GMO and then separation and how you market it. Fourth is farm and renewable energy. This is manure into methane or similar. We don't see a ton of this, but it's a good option if you have something out there like that. And then really common for all of you is locally produced. This is food distribution. You're not changing the value, but because it is local, it does have a higher value in general. The only limitation to this methodology is there is a 400-mile radius limitation, which is quite far. So as long as you're delivering within 400 miles, you're not changing it. It's not produced differently, but because it is local, this would be eligible methodology component. Okay, now we're doing allowable uses. I got ahead of myself. So there is multiple ways for you to apply. This is important when we're looking at business plans and supporting attachments. The emerging market proposal is $50,000 or more, and you are required to attach a feasibility study and business or marketing plan. These are for groups that are emerging into the market. You haven't been in the market for 2 or more years. You are emerging. You have to provide a feasibility study to prove that it is viable and you are going to be successful under emerging markets. Second is 50,000 or more as a market expansion. You've been in the market, you know what you're doing, you're really successful at it, and we're just going further. And so you do have to provide a business or marketing plan, but that feasibility study is not necessary because your experience shows that you're going to be successful otherwise. Third is a really good option for everyone else. 50,000 or less, You're not providing any additional support. We don't need a feasibility study or a business or marketing plan. This is also considered a simplified application. So again, you could be just starting out, you could be already in the market, you could be out there for 2 or more years, but you only need 50,000 or less. Simplified is a really good option and can get you quite far without providing that additional support. Same for food safety. That is also going to be 50,000 or less with no feasibility study or business plan as well. And those can be sometimes lumped together, but they're separate in this case. Okay, now into the planning grants. Again, you can only choose one. So if you choose a planning grant, this can only pay for qualified consultant for a feasibility study, business plan, or marketing plan. That is it. If you're looking at this option, you're just looking to get that end study or attachment to say feasible, not feasible. These are your markets. This is going to be successful. This is not going to be successful. It doesn't really stray from that. So planning grant is really to get you those documents to then further maybe apply for a working capital grant under the emerging market, etc. The working capital grant is where you can get really creative. We're looking at your processing and your marketing in this category, again, up to $200,000 in whichever category that may be. And we have quite a few examples. Like I said, it is very broad. We're looking at your monthly reoccurring expenses, quarterly, yearly, all of that. Processing is a great one. Smoking, curing, canning, flash or blast freezing, vacuum seals, labels, storage and transportation, shipping costs, thinking about all your reoccurring costs that you know you're going to incur for your operation. Payroll's a good one. Anything that your working capital costs were helping you increase your markets to free up cash for other things. Stick to the costs that you know you have and that you know you're going to incur. They're easy to track for the state staff and for you to make this grant go seamless. Another thing to add in this category is we can do up to $10,000 in equipment or supplies, if you will. And those are for fixed assets that you will have for 1 year or more. There is a $10,000 limit on those things. There is also a food safety as of last year, keeping in mind that this can go towards food safety training, sorting and prep tables, cleaning and hygiene supplies. And then this has a little bit higher increase for that equipment cost of up to $6,500 for grant, $13,000 for total. Okay, with all grants, there's a matching component. I don't want that to deter you. We can make our matchup in multiple different ways or combination of ways. For this grant, the match is 1-to-1 ratio. So if you have a $200,000 grant, you will have a $200,000 match, making your total project cost $400,000. So just keep in mind, whatever your grant will be, you'll have that match to go with it. It's really important here that we avoid any conflicts of interest. But like I said, we can make up your match in a combination of ways. And we'll talk about that here. So, like I said, the match is 1-to-1, so 50% of the total project cost. Your match must be spent on eligible expenses if it's cash, and it must be spent in advance. So this grant is a reimbursable grant, so you will incur costs, submit them for reimbursement after you show proof of payment for eligible expenses. And for your match, you can combine cash, which holds obviously higher value. We have in-kind time. So all of the effort and value that you put into your project has value in itself. And so we can mark that time as towards your match. So everything that you're already putting into it, you're getting credit for that. And then we can also give you credit for your commodities in their raw state. So all really good options. Like I said, cash is a higher value, and you'll see that when we get into scoring. But you can give your time up to 25%, and then your commodities also hold value post-harvest. So like I said, don't be deterred by the match. We always figure it out, and it can be a combination, but that is something to consider when you're looking at your overall total project cost. All right, next we're going to get into some portal and application requirements. Like I said last year, we did launch the application portal system, which is really great. The paper became really heavy. It was clunky. This portal will guide you based on your answers to what applies to you and how you respond. This portal did open on the 15th, so we encourage you all to check it out. Create an application under the legal authorized representative and get started. It's great. It saves. You can go in and out and answer questions as you have time. And so we'll get into that here. Like I said, the authorized representative will create the account and application. It's important to note that the organization, all of your information will be put in here. You can contact us through this. We can help you. The state side can see your application live. So as you're working on it and answering questions, we can help guide you and answer any of those questions that it will ask. Like we mentioned earlier, you do have to have a SAM registration as well as a level 2 authentication. This is not a big deal, hopefully. We had some hiccups last year, but we can help you get through that. Anyone that wants access to the portal and application site does have to have a level 2 EAuth, whether that's a grant writer, technical assistance, anyone that's looking at the application will have to have a level 2 EAuth. So important to work on that too as you're looking at applying for the system. Another thing to note here, like I said, you will have representatives and collaborators. So collaborators are anyone that you want assistance from. If you have a grant writer, if you have some technical assistance, anyone that you want support and help from, you can add them. They can look at your work and help add content. They can help answer those questions for you. The authorized representative will be responsible for signing and submitting, but you can have other people look at it as collaborators and help you along, which is really cool. And lastly, there's guides out there. We know that it's not perfect. We're working through all of those things, but the guides are there to help you. We are there to help you. Do not struggle. Those guides are posted and can be a great resource as you're working through those questions. All right, we're just finishing up here, and then you guys can answer all your questions and projects and all of that. So eligibility, it is important to note that all applications are screened for eligibility. Are you a producer? Are you eligible for your methodology? Is your budget eligible? All of those things will be looked at prior to them being scored and ranked. So it's really important to be thorough, work with your state staff, call us if you have questions, because you don't want to go through all of this and then be deemed ineligible at the end. Just being sure that everything looks okay, you feel really good about your submission, and you've worked with the state staff to be sure that you are eligible. Once it is cleared for eligibility and you are determined eligible or not, you will be scored. All about the applications, whether you're asking for $10,000 or $200, are all ranked and scored. And that's how funding is determined. So there's 30 points for nature of the proposed venture project. This is the biggest section. It will ask you your storage components and your technological feasibility, how things are processed, why you do what you do. It's very narrative based, and just making sure that you give the reviewer really good confidence in your success. That is out of 30 points. The qualifications of personnel, you're really good at what you do. You just have to prove it and brag about yourself. Tell us why you are the best fit person for the project and why you will be successful. The budget and the work plan, you're just talking us through your operation and how those budget activities tie to the work plan and relate to the project. That's another 20 points. And then that matching fund component, like I mentioned before, cash is always going to have higher value. So even if you give just a % of cash, you'll get more points than 0. And all points matter when you're being ranked and funded. It is very competitive. And so we want as many points as we can get. Prior assistance, if you've had awards in the past, you will be deducted. But again, we're making up all those points with cash or really strong narrative. So don't be deterred there either. There are standard and priority points for beginning farmer rancher, veteran farmer rancher, medium-sized family farm, cooperatives. Those are easy 5 points. If you qualify for one or more than one, those are really easy 5 points that you will deter or advocate for there. And then this year, there's administration priority points. This is really in the event of a tie or persistent poverty. All of those groups, the administrator has the ability to add on 0 to 10 points for that. So a lot of different opportunities and ways to get points there. I will tell you the narrative is intense. So that's why we always tell people to start early, but nothing in the application is something that you don't already know. It's just getting all of that narrative down on paper to give the reviewer a really good insight into your operation and what this project entails and where that money is going to be going for the life of the project. So with that, these slides do include contact information for Greg, as well as Jessica and Jess at Local Catch. But now we want to open to all your questions. Tell us about your projects. If you are unsure, if you really want to go which way, one way or the other, let us know and we'll talk about what that might look like for you.
Thanks so much, Marley. That was really great information. And we have just about 25 minutes for Q&A, which is great. So how we're going to run this is if folks want to verbally state their question or comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom React box, and I will call on you. And then we'll alternate. If you want to have a written comment or question, please put that in the chat, and I'll alternate with Jess in reading those comments. First hand I see is Ross. Go ahead. We're not hearing you.
Oh,
Ross.
sorry. Was that me? I'm sorry. Was that?
Yes,
Is
go ahead.
my name?
Josh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
we're
I
both from
apologize.
Everglades Oysters. Josh was signed in under the same link, so I think that was what was confusing.
Yeah, apologies. Sorry. Thanks, everyone. I did have a question. We are an oyster farm. We're the southernmost oyster farm here in South Florida, the only one in tropical zone, so we're very differentiated. We already work with a bunch of chefs in South Florida. We're already in a market. We're an emerging market. We have started a shell recycling program and things of that nature. And I just was curious if there's a way to focus is there any type of guidance that you could help us with on focusing for this value added project? Because we have a lot of different ways of adding value, whether that's a vessel that we can put out into our lease area since we're so remote, that can add value. We have a local chef network that can add the local value. We have the shells, which is usually a piece of trash, but now we're able to recover those shells and use those as raw material for restoration projects and things like that. So I think first and foremost, we'd love to just ask, is there any guidance that you could help us with to maybe hone down that message and put together something that's concise under this value added program?
So there was a lot there, so I'm going to kind of back up a little bit and just cover
I
a few
could go
things.
on. There's even more. So yeah, I appreciate it.
No, these are good questions, and it's kind of goes to the point of how you even put one of these grants together, right? Or how you basically scale a project. So what I would think about first and foremost when you start the project is, what commodity are you producing, and what do you intend to do with it? Now, for some of you, you're going to say, well, I produce a lot of different commodities. That's fine too. But don't make your application too complicated. Try to hone in on some key things that you've been wanting to do with your commodities and focus in there. Don't try to get too many products going at one time. You can apply for this grant in the future again. So say you were doing some sort of canned fish product this time, great. And then maybe next time you were going to actually make some chowder. then do that the next time. Don't try to mix too much up in here at one time, right? And then when you put your grant together, really focus in on what do you need as far as post-harvest value-added related help. So the expenses need to be directly related to the processing and or marketing of the value-added product. We talked about that earlier. Marley talked about that earlier. So it all has to be post-harvest related. So think about what is it going to take for you to take that commodity that's already been harvested, now is sitting on the boat, or you got it at the docks now and you're ready to take it and you're ready to process it into something else. Are you going to need to pay a co-packer to process it for you? Are you going to process it yourself using labor that you're going to be hiring? You're going to need packaging, you're going to need labels, you're going to need some marketing, some advertising. Maybe you're going to take your product to a local farmer's market and try to sell it yourself as a fresh food product. What's it going to cost to take the product to the farmer's market? Maybe host that booth there. You're going to have to hire or pay somebody to work that farmer's market booth for you. Maybe you're going to several of them. These are all kind of like the post-harvest things that are eligible for the program, right? What's not really eligible for the program, and not that you were going down this road, but I'm just going to kind of cover this real quick. What's not really eligible for this program is somebody down the processing line to apply for this grant. So in order to qualify, in order to be eligible, you have to be the person that has the legal right to harvest the commodity. You have to be the one that has the licensing to go out and fish. You have to be the one that owns that commodity from harvest all the way through value added venture, right? So think about it like this. The program is all designed around increasing that person's or that entity's revenue and that entity's customer base. Now, folks down the processing line can definitely benefit from this program indirectly by maybe working with you and receiving a fee to package your product for you, or supply you with packaging itself, or maybe set up a website for you. That's all fine and that's all great. But the actual person that needs to demonstrate an increase in revenue and increase in customer base is the one that has the legal right to harvest the commodity, who owns the business. And for that matter, in order to be eligible for the program, you have to be those people. You have to be the one that's eligible to harvest that commodity and sell it. So um, if you start putting together an application using the grant application portal, the portal will drive you through, various questions, and it's a smart system so that it only routes you to the questions that, depending on what you answered before, what you're going to need to answer next, right? And you'll get to the work plan and budget eventually, and you'll see some examples of what we can pay for. You also see examples of what we cannot pay for. Once you kind of start working your way through that, maybe putting together, we'll call it a draft budget or a draft work plan, you can then reach out to your state specialists. They can review it. We can see your applications in real time because of the grant application portal. So we can log in, we can look at your applications with you, see what you're looking to do. We can advise you and say, hey, look, this is great, this is great, this is great, but these two things aren't eligible. You probably need to go a different route with it. And these are these cursory reviews, as we refer to them, they're great options for you because the first thing you need to do when you submit your application is make it through eligibility. If you have too many ineligible expenses, or you're thinking about the program wrong, and your work plan and budget's kind of set up incorrectly, it could potentially be kicked out. And these cursory reviews can help you avoid that happening to you. So I definitely recommend, once you get your project started and kind of in its draft form, reach out to the state offices. I got a little long-winded there, so I'm going to stop. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but feel free to jump back in.
Thanks.
That was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I will definitely take advantage of the cursory evaluation. Appreciate it.
Yep, not a problem.
The last thing, or the second thing I would add to that is there's things that you mentioned that we might not be eligible for the program. So stick with what would work for VAPG. And once you get that reimbursement, you can use that to then recycle or do those things that you mentioned that wouldn't fall under the program. It is used to increase cash. And so what you do with that on the back end is outside of the grant, and you can obviously do whatever you wish with that.
So if you guys don't mind, before we go to the next hand raising, there were a couple of questions that came in during the chat, and I just want to talk about those real fast. So one person had asked about cash contributions, if you need to be able to show that you have the money in the bank and all that to cover your match. As Marley said, this is a one-to-one program. So for every dollar in grant you ask for from us, you have to provide $1 in match yourselves, right? And a lot of times that's cash match, and you do actually score higher the more cash match you contribute. You'll see that in the portal, and you'll see how that all breaks down in there. But your match does not need to be all cash. the commodity that you're using to contribute to the product or project, whatever the value of that fish is, say sitting there on the dock that you could sell it as a wholesale product, that can be used as match. That's perfectly fine. Also, your labor. You're going to spend a lot of time working on this project, whether you're helping with the processing, maybe you're overseeing the project, you're managing it, you're doing all kinds of different things, right? Your labor that you use to contribute to the project can also count as match up to a certain limit, and the portal will break down the limits for you on that. So there's various different ways to cover match. Do not get discouraged if you think, oh, this is a one-to-one match. I don't have enough cash. I don't have enough this. There's ways to get to that match. Another question came in about there's a new 15% caveat, and you guys are going to see it in the merit evaluation section of the application. This has to do with whether or not you're using a grant writer to help prepare your application. Basically, there are some great grant writing services out there. And 9.5 out of 10 of them charge a fair amount, and they provide great services for that. They'll help you put your application together. They'll do all kinds of things for you to kind of help you submit your application and get it into the USDA, right? But some grant writers are charging pretty excessive fees. Just going to be blunt about it. I mean, they're pretty excessive, some of the fees. So if you are using a grant writer, we do ask you to answer a question on the merit evaluation section. It is required in the application, and you have to basically certify to us if you are paying more than 15% of the grant amount in grant writing services. Now, these fees are not eligible for the grant itself, and we realize that people are paying them on the back end, but they are still taking money from a project and diverting it to, because it's happening on the back end, to say a grant writing service. So if you are doing that, you're still eligible for the program. You can pay somebody as much as you want to prepare a grant for you, but you will not be eligible for administrator priority points if you're paying more than 15%. Again, and I just want to go back to what I said initially, 9.5 out of 10 of the grant writers are doing exceptional jobs. It's really only a couple out there that are charging pretty hefty fees, and we're trying to reel those in because we want the funds going to where they're supposed to be going, which is to the farmers, which in this case would be the harvesters of the fish or whatever it is, so that you can take that money and you can invest it into your project, and you can increase your revenues, increase your customer base for your agricultural business. That's where the money's supposed to be going. If there were some others that I said I would come back to later, please put your hand up and remind me, but we can jump back into the questions now if you don't mind.
Yeah,
Greg, can I just ask really quickly? I just wanted to review. We did have a question in the chat about who to call if they get stuck, and you had mentioned calling state offices. If you could just go over that one more time before we get to hands raised.
Oh, thanks for that reminder. Yeah, because I did want to go back to that. So I also posted the VAPG webpage link in there, and in that response, I should say. So if you go to that VAPG webpage link and you sort by your state office, it'll give you and then you go to the contact information once you've set your state office, it'll give you the contact information for the folks in your state. If for some reason you are not seeing that information on the website and you can't find it, you can email me directly or even call me directly, and I'll get you in contact with the right person. But remember, these grants are reviewed at the state office level for eligibility. So I think it's always great when the state offices are directly involved in these projects and they know what's coming in and they know a little bit about it. So basically, reach out to that person in your state office, talk to them about your project early and often, do those cursory reviews with them. They can be great assets for you and making sure that you, at the very least, get past that eligibility phase so that you can then compete in the scoring competition. And I just put my email address in there again.
Okay. We can go back to the questions. Carrie, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just wondering if you guys could give us an idea of the success rate of applicants. So number of applicants compared to successful applicants in general.
Absolutely. So I see these numbers a lot, and I've kind of memorized a lot of them. So unfortunately, out of the applications we get, probably about 30% of them drop off right at the initial phase for eligibility reasons. They misunderstand what we can do with the program, right? A lot of folks want to build a barn, they want to put in a commercial kitchen, they want to do some sort of infrastructure on their farm. That's not what this program's for. It's for value added processing, marketing, post-harvest scale stuff, but not for actually building out infrastructure. They get rejected right off the bat. A lot of those folks if they would have done the cursory review or if they'd attended one of these events like you're doing, they probably would have avoided those issues. So I fully expect everyone on this call to avoid any of those eligibility issues and then compete for the scoring. So 70% of the applications that come in make it through eligibility and get scored. And out of that, it all depends on how much money we have, but I would say the end number is always somewhere around 35, 40% of the applications submitted end up getting funded. It is a competition. You want to provide clear and concise responses, but really what you want to do is you want to convey a viable project to the reviewers through your responses so that you score well and that they can tell that, hey, look, this is going to be a viable project. They apply a solid score to it, and you're going to see all the scoring breakdowns and mechanisms on the merit evaluation page of the grant application portal. Just make sure you're being thorough in your responses, and you should do pretty well.
Jess, do you want to go back to the chat and read?
Yes, thank you. So we had another question about where they might be able to find examples of successful projects and products that have been funded by the program. And I guess I would say specifically, ideally, fisheries and seafood products.
I'm sorry, one more time on that.
Apologies. We had a question asking for examples of successful projects and products that have been funded by the program. And I would just add to that specifically seafood or fisheries products and projects.
Yeah, and I would say, and I'm going to see if I can Google it right now for you guys and just post the link. There's an entity out there that they actually receive funding for or from VAPG through the Farm Bill to go out and help market and highlight the program itself. It's known as AgMark, and that's AGMRC. And they produce these videos that give really basically success stories or real world examples of successful projects. And I would encourage you, I know if you go to YouTube and you just Google AgMark and VAPG, the videos are going to start popping up. But if you go to, here it is right here. I think I found it. If you go to this webpage, I'm going to post it in the chat for everybody. You'll see some links to some of the various different highlight videos, some past applications, things like that. Watch a few of them. You'll get the idea real quick just after a few on what people are doing with the money and how it's benefiting them.
I have a question myself.
Sure.
So you talked about local being defined as 400 miles. So my question is, how is that defined for fisheries? Is it based on where it's caught or landed, or if there's some pre-processing?
Yeah, it's definitely where it's produced. So if you're producing it off the coast of Maine, then it's going to be 400 miles from wherever that town is where you're bringing it to the docks, or within the state. So
okay,
going back to what Marley said initially, there's 5 different methodologies you can use to qualify. So if you're taking your fish, you're harvesting it, and you're just selling it as a whole fish, locally grown and produced can be a very popular option because you don't need to process the fish any further, right? You can just sell it locally. You can sell it at a farmer's market, and it's a very popular option these days because locally grown and produced means it travels less distances, it's processed less preservatives, all that type of stuff, right? But if you're taking and doing anything to the fish, as an example, once it gets to the dock, so you're processing it, you're filleting it, you're doing something with it, then I would say it qualifies for one of the other methodologies. And that doesn't have the restriction of 400 miles or within the state. You can sell it anywhere.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so we had another question in the chat specifically about that. I think, what about if you fish in Alaska, but you live in Washington State, which is she's saying roughly 600 miles by sea between the two states. So how might that fit? So that it would apply as Alaska if you're fishing.
Yeah,
if
you're
it's an
fishing,
Alaska permit.
your license is in Alaska, excuse me, your permit's in Alaska. I'll give you guys a quick example. So I think it was a year or two back, we had a fishery up in Alaska. I think they were doing salmon, but it might be halibut. Can't remember. It was one of the two. They're actually taking it, and their business was licensed. Their processing entity and all that was licensed in Michigan, I believe. So they were packaging it, putting it on ice, whatever, and shipping it back to Michigan. And then they were actually selling it at farmers markets. You still apply under Alaska, even though you're selling the product in Michigan, a couple thousand miles, or probably a few thousand miles away at that point. That's all perfectly fine, but your license, everything was given to you by Alaska, and that's what you should use.
So just a
No, you're not
clarifying
restricted
question.
to
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
but that's only if
Yeah.
you're
So somebody
identifying it as a
asks,
local product.
yeah. So the whole distribution on where you can sell it at, you're not restricted on where you can sell it at. The only restriction applies to if you come in under that locally produced agricultural food product. Um, that one has the restriction of 400 miles or within the state. The other four option, and I'll just tell you, 90% of the applications that come into the USDA are for change in physical state, meaning you're taking some fruit and you're making jams and jellies. You're changing the physical state. You're taking some seafood out of the ocean, and then you're processing it into something and making into something and making something with it, right? So you're changing the physical state. It can't be turned back. Most people are coming in under that methodology. So you're probably not going to run into any restrictions.
Thanks, Greg. We have one hand up. So Penelope, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you just review what these 5 methodologies are? And I don't see them listed out on the homepage for the grant. I'm just wondering where I can see more about them, A.
Yeah, I can.
But I got a second part of the question.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
The second
Go
part
ahead.
is, you said that, a lot of these are coming in through a change in state methodology. I'm wondering if
Right.
if like as a strategy, is it better to maybe try to position your grant in a methodology that is less common? Like how, like as these things are being ranked, are they being ranked within methodologies, or like how is that ranking and the methodologies connected, if at all? If that makes sense.
So yeah, the methodology is an eligibility concern. It's not necessarily you'll get the award or not concern. So what I mean by that is there's 5 different methodologies. I'm going to see if Marley can't put those back up on the screen for you guys, and we'll go over them. You have to qualify under one of the methodologies, meaning you have to take the commodity that you're producing, do something with it on a post-harvest scale so that it qualifies for one of those 5 methodologies, and then you're good to go. That means you're good. You have an eligible product and project that can proceed for the application. The very first one is, like I said, the most common. It's called a change in physical state. Basically, that means you're taking an agricultural commodity and you're changing it into an irreversible form so that it cannot be taken back to that original commodity form. So this has a lot really more to do with like crops and things like that, where if you're taking an apple and you're making some apple juice, you've changed the physical state of the apple, you can't bring it back. But if you just grow an apple and you don't do anything with it, you cannot qualify under the change in physical state. Same thing would apply, for the fisheries, right? So that's the first one. That's the change in physical state. The next one is produced in a manner. You're not going to be able to do this one as a fisherman because to produce something in a manner means you have to grow it, raise it in a way that enhances the value of the commodity. So what we're talking about there are things like organic, grass-fed beef, free-range chickens, things that enhance the value of a product because you're producing it that way and you're selling it that way. So with fisheries, you're not going to want to look at that one. The other one is a farmer ranch-based renewable energy. We're not even going to get into that one because as a fishery, you don't have that. And then the next one is also not going to apply. It's the physical segregation. This one's talking about GMO versus non-GMO corn as an example, where you're raising, growing it completely separately. So that one's also not going to apply. So really it's the physical, change in physical state. That's going to be your first one, or it's going to be the final one that I'm getting ready to talk about, which is a locally grown and produced food product. Remember, that one's the one that says that You have a product, going back to that apple example from earlier. You want to sell that apple, you grow it and raise it in Washington State, and you're going to go to the farmer's market and you're going to sell it as a locally grown and produced food product here in the state of Washington or within 400 miles of where it was produced. And by doing so, you're receiving an enhanced value for that product because it's traveled less distance, processed less preservatives, it's a fresher product. Know your farmer, know your food type mentality there. That qualifies as well. So either you're changing the physical state or you're probably selling it as a locally grown and produced food product if you're talking about some sort of fishery derived commodity.
I think we have one or two more questions in the chat, and then we'll have to wrap it up because we're almost at time. Jess, go ahead.
Yeah, Shannon Ward had a question about proceeding through the forms that help guide. Are they locked into answers that they give determining what we would like the funding for, or can we change them if our first choices would disqualify the business or rank us lower in the competition? So how can you proceed through if you might have been knocked out or might have a more advantage going under a different methodology, I think is the question.
So I just posted the methodologies there in the chat. You'll see the 5 of them there listed. When you're applying for a working capital grant, as an example, and most people are going to apply for working capital. It's just kind of the nature of the program. When you come into us for the project, sometimes you're going to need a feasibility study, sometimes you're going to need a business plan, sometimes you won't, depending on if you're doing one of the market expansion or food safety projects, and we waive that requirement for you. You'll see what the requirements are based off of what you're applying for, right? But what you're doing is you're basically delivering to us, and this program really should be designed around, or I should say your project should be designed around product that you really want to get out to the marketplace. You shouldn't probably look and say, all right, how am I going to fit my thing into this? This should probably be something that you're passionate about and that you want to do and you've been wanting to do and you want to get to the marketplace. You've thought about how you're going to do it, what it's going to take to do it, what it's going to cost to do it, what the profit margins look like, what the expenses are going to be, what the viability of the project's going to be, right? Because that's what you're going to be assessed on. This program's all about helping you get that product to the marketplace, but it's got to be getting a viable product to the marketplace. So when you submit your application, it should really be conveyed in a way that it's somewhat of a matter of fact, meaning if I do this, this, and this, the results are going to be X, Y, and Z, right? And you need to convey that. So there's not a lot of back and forth. Once the application deadline comes and goes, whatever you're submitting, that's what we're going to evaluate. You can't go back and change. But if you have concerns about what you put in the application, that's when you can come to the state offices prior to the application deadline, ask them to review your application, review your work plan and budget, and provide feedback to you so that you can then make some changes before that application deadline comes and goes. So that might be where that comes into play a little bit. But really, when you think about this program, I can't emphasize this enough. Think about something that, you know about, you want to do, and that you want to, it's something you've been wanting to do with your agricultural commodity and market that you've been wanting to get it to. Not trying to figure out, well, how can I make it happen? Because the ones that are just trying to figure that out, they're usually not quite as successful as the ones that, hey, this is what I want to do. I've actually been doing it. I just need to take it to the next level. That's what this program's for.
Thanks, Greg. We're at time. I know there's a few more questions in the chat. So unless we go over by another couple minutes, I'd recommend that you just email Greg with those final questions, and I'll turn it over to you, Jess, to wrap us up.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. We will have this recording available on our website where you went before you registered at localcatch.org/webinars. And also it'll be available on YouTube. And if you follow us on socials, you'll be able to find it there as well as through our newsletter. We're going to have these questions available as well to anyone who may have missed the recording. So just follow us and you will get some answers. And I just want to say thank you to our USDA reps, Marley and Greg, for joining us today and providing us with some really fantastic information. This has been incredibly helpful.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. We'll
Thank
see-
you.